In the heat of the UN-MCR war, both factions had organized the remaining forces they operated in the Jovian System and diverted them towards Callisto for one final major engagement over the major MCRN shipyard there. However, orders from Undersecretary Ehrenreich of the UN diverted the UNN Agatha King, a Truman-class dreadnought, towards Io to pick up the remnants of a protomolecule research project there. Noticing the diversion of the UNN flagship, which was under the command of Admiral Nuang, one of the leading admirals within the UNN, the MCRN dispatched the MCRN Hammurabi, a Scirocco-class assault cruiser, to pursue the Agatha King to figure out what they were doing on Io. At the same time, the independent vessel the Rocinante, operating in the area, was also burning towards Io in an effort to stop the protomolecule research going on there. Seeing the wayward ships diverting towards Io, a vast majority of both the UNN vessels and the MCRN vessels began also following the Hammurabi and the Agatha King towards Io. At this point now, both fleets that were on a collision course over Callisto are now bound for Io, where it appears like a major battle is bound to take place. Meanwhile, on board the UNN Agatha King, the two admirals on board, Admiral Nu Wang, the commander of the vessel, and Admiral Souther, who was removed from command just days earlier by Admiral Nuang, fearing a mutiny, were coming more and more at odds with one another as information began to disseminate throughout the UNN warship that there was now evidence that Undersecretary Ehrenreich had orchestrated the entirety of the conflict. Still loyal to Ehrenreich, Admiral Nuang tried his best to suppress these ideas on board his vessel, while Admiral Souther began questioning the legitimacy of his command. While both vessels were making their way towards Io, the Rocinante was able to quietly approach the secluded protomolecule research facility on the surface of the moon, land near it, and begin deploying ground forces and approaching the facility. It's around this time that the UNN Agatha King entered firing range of the Hammurabi. The Hammurabi prepared its weapons but refused to fire, with the crew of the Hammurabi also being aware of the ongoing political tensions on board the UNN warship. It's around this time that a good portion of the crew of the Agatha King, siding with Admiral Souther, attempted to remove Admiral Nuang from control of the vessel, citing him in a conspiracy being carried out by Ehrenreich to continue the conflict. This mutiny led to confusion within the UNN forces. The end result was that the MCRN forces pursuing backed off slightly, uncertain of the occurrences going on within the UNN Fleet structure. Forces under the command of Admiral Souther were able to briefly take control of the bridge and order UNN forces to stand down. However, their control of the bridge was short-lived, as Admiral Nuang's forces were able to quickly retake the command center on board the Agatha King and order the UNN forces to fire on the Martian ships. However, it was noticed by Admiral Nuang on board the Agatha King that the UNN Jimenez was not following his orders, instead backing off from the engagement. After 2 warnings, the UNN Agatha King fired a single torpedo at the UNN Jimenez, which was destroyed. There was a jarring moment within the UN fleet watching their own flagship fire on one of their vessels, and absolute chaos ensued, with vessels loyal to Admiral Nuang opening fire on vessels that had been hesitant to follow his orders, and the vessels loyal to Admiral Souther firing back. In the confusion, a salvo of torpedoes was fired at the UNN Agatha King, which managed to destroy all of them, however was unable to return fire, with some of its weapon systems being damaged. Suddenly seeing UNN forces firing on one another, MCRN forces were ordered to stand down and offered a hand of peace to any UNN vessels that joined the ceasefire, with Martian vessels obviously promising to offer assistance to any stricken UNN warships. Ultimately, seeking to put an end to the fighting and end to the war in general, Admiral Nuang, from on board the Agatha King, ordered a series of hybrid pods containing protomolecule hybrids on the surface of Io to be fired into space in the direction of Mars. Thinking quickly, the PDCs on board the Rocinante were able to disable a good number of these pods, preventing them from leaving Io's sphere of influence. And while a few of these pods were able to escape the AO and begin making their way to Mars, the most notable impact of these pods were the few that impacted the Agatha King. The Agatha King was now not only dealing with the shattered remnants of a mutiny and a crew not knowing who they were allegiant to, but now a quickly spreading protomolecule infestation. The chaos on board the Agatha King and within the UNN fleet was even more rampant at this point. By the time the protomolecule infection had really taken hold on board the Agatha King, most of the UNN warships in the Jupiter fleet had accepted the ceasefire proposed by the MCRN and had withdrawn from the battle space. Meanwhile, survivors still struggled to stay alive on board the now stricken Agatha King. In an effort to disable the hybrid pods bound for Mars, the Razorback, which had been dispatched by the Rocinante, docked with the infested Agatha King, and boarders made their way to the CIC only to find that the ability to deactivate the pods would not be doable before the vessel was scuttled. Ultimately, the boarders were forced to withdraw from the Agatha King before it detonated, only managing to turn on the transponders on the torpedoes as opposed to disarm them. This battle concluded with the Agatha King's destruction at the hands of its own reactor, as it was set to go critical to prevent the protomolecule from spreading any further. Following the end of the engagement, the protomolecule pods that had been sent towards Mars were intercepted by missiles fired by OPA installations. Jules-Pierre Mao was arrested on Io for war crimes, and the information that Undersecretary Ehrenreich was responsible for the conflict was disseminated to the rest of the system, ultimately resulting in his arrest and the end of the war. With the Jupiter fleets having agreed to a ceasefire and most of the fighting having stopped, this concluded the UN-MCR war. If you'd like to learn more about how this war started, I'll leave a link in the upper right-hand corner to my video on the Ganymede incident, the showdown that actually started this conflict. And if you have any other engagements you'd like to see covered in future episodes of Battle Analysis and added to the archive, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.